Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderstrike and watched the stars. Space looked peaceful from here, but he knew better. His ship was the most advanced vessel humanity had ever built, and it was his job to explore the unknown parts of the galaxy. The year was 2387. Humans had only learned to travel faster than light a few decades ago. They had built colonies on 12 worlds, but compared to the vast galaxy around them, humanity was still very small and very young. "Captain," said Nari from her station. She was the ship's communications officer, and her voice sounded worried. "I'm getting something strange on the long-range sensors." Minho walked over to her console. Nari had been with him for 3 years, and she never got excited about nothing. If she thought something was strange, it probably was. "What kind of strange?" he asked. Nari pointed at her screen. "It's a signal, but not like anything I've ever seen. The pattern is too complex to be natural, but it's not from any human ship or colony." Minho felt his heart beat faster. First contact with alien life was something every human dreamed about, but it was also something they feared. Nobody knew if aliens would be friendly or hostile. "Can you clean up the signal?" he asked. "I'm trying, but it's very weak. Whatever sent this is either very far away or almost out of power." Nari's fingers moved quickly across her controls. "Wait, I think I've got something." The bridge speakers crackled to life. A sound came through that was unlike anything Minho had ever heard. It was musical but sad, like a song of pain and fear. Even though he couldn't understand the words, he could feel the desperation in it. "Get Deho up here," Minho ordered. "If anyone can figure out what this means, it's him." Deho was the ship's linguist. He had studied every human language and had theories about how alien languages might work. When he arrived on the bridge, his eyes were bright with excitement. "Play it again," he said, before anyone could explain what was happening. Nari played the signal 3 more times. Deho listened carefully, taking notes on his tablet. After the 4th time, he looked up at Minho. "This is definitely a language," he said, "and if I'm right about the mathematical patterns, it's a distress call." "Are you sure?" Minho asked. "The repetition patterns, the frequency changes, the way certain sounds are emphasized, it all matches what we'd expect from an emergency." Broadcast. Deho played a section of the signal again. "This part here repeats every 37 seconds. That's probably their identification. And this rising tone at the end, that's universal for urgency in most human languages." Minho made a decision. That would change the course of galactic history. "How long do you need to translate it?" "Give me 6 hours with the computer, and I should have at least the basic meaning." Those 6 hours felt like 6 days to everyone on the bridge. The crew knew they might be listening to the first message from another intelligent species. When Deho finally returned, his face was pale. "Captain, you need to hear this," he said. "Computer, play Translation Protocol 7. The computer's voice filled the bridge, cold and mechanical, but the words it spoke made everyone's blood run cold. "This is the Kelani Republic emergency broadcast. Our worlds are dying. The ancient enemy has awakened. The void swarm consumes everything in its path. We have fled for generations, but there is nowhere left to run. If anyone receives this message, please help us. We are the last of our people." The message repeated, and each time it sounded more desperate. "There's more," Deho said. "I've been able to piece together some of their history from the longer broadcasts. The Kelani are crystal-based life forms. They lived in peace for thousands of years until something called the Void Swarm appeared. It's some kind of machine intelligence that strips planets bare and turns the materials into more machines." "How many Kelani are left?" asked Nari. "From what I can tell, maybe a few million scattered across refugee fleets. They used to number in the billions." Minho stared at the stars outside. Somewhere out there, an entire civilization was dying, and they were calling for help. But what could humanity do? They were barely able to defend their own 12 colonies. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "Maximum speed?" The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Minho sent encrypted messages to Earth Command, explaining what they had found. By the time the thunderstrike arrived in Earth orbit, the entire government was waiting for answers. Admiral Hyun was the first to speak when Minho entered the conference room. "Captain, I've read your report. Are you absolutely certain this isn't some kind of trick?" "As certain as I can be, sir. The Kelani broadcasts include star charts, technical specifications of their ships, even samples of their music and art. No human could have created something this detailed." President Era leaned forward. "And you believe this void swarm is real?" "Yes, ma'am. And according to the Kalani data, it's heading in our general direction." The room fell silent. Dr. June, Earth's leading expert on alien biology, had been studying the Kalani transmissions. He stood up and activated a holographic display. "I've analyzed the swarm's expansion patterns," he said. "If it continues at its current rate, it will reach human space in approximately 50 to 70 years. Admiral Hyun shook his head. "We can't fight something that destroyed an entire galactic civilization. We need to focus on defending Earth and our colonies." "With respect, Admiral," said President Era, "hiding won't save us. If this thing is as powerful as the Kalani say, our defenses won't matter." Dr. June nodded. "The President is right. Our only chance is to help the Kalani and their allies. Learn from their mistakes. Maybe together we can find a way to stop this thing." The debate continued for hours, but in the end the decision was made. Humanity would answer the Kalani distress call. They would send ships and weapons and people to help fight an enemy they didn't understand. Some called it heroic. Others called it suicide. Captain Minho knew it was probably both. But as he looked at the star charts showing the void swarm's path of destruction, he also knew it was their only choice. 3 days later, the first human battle fleet left Earth orbit, heading toward the coordinates in the Kalani distress signal. They carried humanity's most advanced weapons, their best soldiers, and their hopes for survival. They also carried something the galaxy had never seen before: the willingness to fight for strangers they had never met, simply because it was the right thing to do. Commander Yuna floated in her crystal ship's command center, her body glowing with worry patterns. The human vessels approaching her refugee fleet looked strange and dangerous. Where Kalani ships were smooth and beautiful like living gems, the human ships were covered in sharp angles and weapon ports. "They say they received our distress call," reported her communications officer. "They want to help us fight the void swarm." Yuna's crystals dimmed with doubt. The humans looked primitive compared to Kalani technology. Their ships moved clumsily, and their energy readings were far below what she expected from a spacefaring race. "Allow them to dock with our command ship," she decided. "But keep our shields ready." When the human delegation arrived, Yuna was surprised. She had expected them to be taller or more intimidating. Instead, they looked soft and weak. The one who introduced himself as General Wook was smaller than most Kalani, with skin that looked easily damaged. "Commander Yuna," said General Wook through his translator device, "we're here to help you fight the void swarm." Yuna's crystals flashed with polite disbelief. "General, we appreciate your offer, but you don't understand what we're facing. The swarm has destroyed thousands of worlds. It consumed our entire civilization. Our most advanced weapons barely scratched their hulls." "Tell me about these weapons," General Wook said. Yuna activated a holographic display. "Energy shields that can stop any projectile, gravity manipulators that can bend space itself, quantum disruptors that can phase matter out of existence." "General." Wook listened carefully, then asked, "What about kinetic weapons?" "Kinetic weapons?" Yuna's crystals showed confusion. "You mean throwing rocks? That's primitive." "Sometimes primitive works," said General Wook with a strange smile. Over the next few days, Yuna learned more about human military thinking. She met engineer Hannah, who showed her human weapon designs. The humans didn't rely on energy shields or complex technologies. Instead, they built simple, brutal weapons designed to destroy targets through raw force. "This is a railgun," Hannah explained, showing Yuna a schematic. "It fires a metal projectile at tremendous speed. No energy field can stop solid matter moving at significant fractions of light speed. But that's so. Violent, said Yuna. Hannah nodded. War is violent. The swarm doesn't understand mercy or negotiation. Sometimes violence is the only language left. The other alien species in the refugee fleet were equally shocked by human methods. The gas-dwelling Nethrani had never conceived of physical combat. Their conflicts were resolved through chemical signals and pheromone negotiations. The hive-minded Zephyrite made decisions through collective consciousness, avoiding disagreement entirely. To all of them, the human approach to warfare seemed insane. That changed when the swarm found them. The attack came without warning. Void. Swarm ships appeared at the edge of the system, their dark hulls absorbing light like hungry mouths. They moved with mechanical precision toward the refugee fleet. All ships prepare to retreat, Commander Yuna ordered. It was the same command given by Kalani leaders for generations. Run, hide, hope the swarm would find easier targets, but human ships didn't retreat. Captain Kyung of the human cruiser Ironwolf opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. All vessels, this is Ironwolf Actual. We're moving to engage the enemy. Recommend you stay back and let us show you how this is done. Yuna watched in horror as the small human fleet accelerated directly toward the swarm vessels. It looked like suicide. The swarm ships were 3 times larger and armed with weapons that had torn apart entire Kalani battle groups. The first exchange of fire seemed to prove Yuna right. Swarm energy beams tore through human shields, causing explosions across their hulls, but the humans kept coming. Ironwolf to all human vessels. Captain Kyung's voice remained calm even as his ship shook from impact, ramming speed. Let's show these machines what happens when they mess with Deathworlders. Yuna didn't understand the word Deathworlders, but she was about to learn what it meant. The Ironwolf had taken too much damage to survive much longer. Its engines were failing and its weapons were offline. Any sane commander would order his crew to abandon ship. Instead, Captain Kyung aimed his dying vessel directly at the largest swarm ship and pushed his engines far beyond safe limits. All hands brace for impact, was the last transmission from the Ironwolf. The human cruiser struck the swarm vessel at tremendous speed. Captain Kyung had timed the collision perfectly, ramming his ship's reactor core directly into the enemy's central structure. The explosion was visible from across the system. When the light faded, both ships were gone. The remaining swarm vessels paused, as if confused by what they had witnessed. In their mechanical logic, destroying one's own ship to damage an enemy made no sense. It was illogical, wasteful, inefficient. The other human ships used that moment of confusion to press their attack. They fired their primitive kinetic weapons at point-blank range, punching holes through swarm hulls that had resisted Kalani energy weapons for decades. Within an hour, the entire swarm scouting force was destroyed. The refugee fleet floated in. Stunned silence. Commander Yuna's crystals flickered through colors she had never displayed before. She felt something she hadn't experienced in generations. Hope. General Wook, she said over the communication channel. What did your captain mean by Deathworlders? General Wook's image appeared on her screen. He looked tired but satisfied. It's what the other species call us. See, most intelligent life develops on peaceful worlds. Stable climates, abundant resources, few natural predators, but Earth is different. He activated a display showing images of Earth. Yuna saw massive storms, active volcanoes, predatory animals with sharp teeth and claws. Everything on our world tries to kill us, General Wook continued. The weather, the animals, even the plants. We evolve fighting for survival every single day. That's why we're good at war. We've been practicing our entire evolutionary history, Commander Yuna understood now. The humans weren't just warriors, they were survivors from a world that had tried to destroy them for millions of years. They didn't see the Void Swarm as an unstoppable force. They saw it as just another predator to be defeated. Will you teach us? She asked. General Wook smiled. Commander, by the time we're done, every species in this galaxy is going to know how to fight like a human. The swarm made one big mistake. What mistake is that? They attacked our new friends. And humans don't let anyone hurt their friends. News of the victory spread quickly through the refugee fleet. For the first time in generations, Aliens began to believe they could fight back against the Void Swarm. The humans had shown them something. They had forgotten that sometimes the only way to preserve life was to be willing to risk it in battle. Engineer Hana began working with Kelani technicians, combining human weapons with alien technology. The results were impressive. Kelani crystal matrices could guide human projectiles with perfect accuracy. Nethrani gas weapons could be delivered by human missile systems. But the most important thing the humans brought wasn't technology. It was attitude. They showed the galaxy that being civilized didn't mean being helpless. That sometimes to protect what you love, you had to become something your enemies feared. The Void Swarm had consumed countless peaceful civilizations. Now it was about to meet its first Deathworld species, and Deathworlders never gave up. Ambassador Tay stepped off his shuttle onto the crystal platform of the Kelani refugee station. Around him, the largest gathering of alien species in galactic history was taking place. News of humanity's victory against the Void Swarm had spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Representatives from 43 different species had come to see these strange Deathworlders, who had done what no one else could. They had made the swarm bleed. Ambassador, Commander Yuna greeted him with a respectful crystal chime. The Vrex delegation is asking about human weapon manufacturing. They want to know if we can mass-produce your kinetic systems. Tay nodded. The insectoid Vrex were master builders. Their hive colonies could construct entire fleets in months if they had the right designs. What do they want in return? Protection protocols? They've never fought a war before. They need to learn human battle tactics. It was the same story everywhere. Species that had spent thousands of years avoiding conflict were suddenly desperate to learn how to fight. The galaxy had tried diplomacy, trade sanctions, and hiding. Only violence had worked against the swarm. Admiral Sun watched the construction yards orbiting the Kelani station with satisfaction. Human engineers worked alongside alien technicians, creating weapons that had never existed before. Kelani crystal matrices made human targeting systems incredibly accurate. Vrex acid spitters were being mounted on human missile platforms. Deep lander pressure cannons could punch through swarm armor like paper. Admiral, reported his aide captain. Dong, the Bright Ones have sent us their analysis of swarm technology. They think they've found a weakness. The Bright Ones were energy beings who existed as pure consciousness. They rarely spoke to physical species, but the swarm threat had forced them to break their isolation. What kind of weakness? Admiral Sun asked. Captain Dong activated a holographic display. The swarm operates on pure logic. Every decision is calculated for maximum efficiency. They can't understand actions that don't make logical sense. Like ramming attacks, Admiral Sun said, remembering Captain Kung's sacrifice. Exactly. The Bright Ones think we can use this against them. If we can force the swarm to make decisions quickly, using tactics they can't predict, we might be able to confuse their coordination networks. Admiral Sun smiled. Confusion and chaos were things humans understood very well. Dr. Bomi was working in her laboratory when the breakthrough came. She had been studying captured swarm technology for weeks, trying to understand how their artificial intelligence worked. The machines were incredibly advanced, but they had one fatal flaw. They're too perfect, she explained to Admiral Sun during their daily briefing. Human AI systems are designed to handle random inputs and unexpected situations. But the swarm AI assumes all opponents will act logically. So, if we act illogically, their decision-making process slows down. They have to run millions of calculations to figure out what we're doing. That creates delays we can exploit. It was the kind of insight that only humans could have provided. Every other species in the galaxy valued logical thinking above all else. Only humans regularly made decisions based on emotion, instinct, and pure stubbornness. The first major test of the new alliance came when a swarm fleet attacked the Vrex homeworld. The insectoids had built impressive defenses, but they were designed for asteroid impacts and solar flares. Not military assault. Fleet Admiral Dong led the response force, a mixed fleet of human ships and alien allies. It was the first time so many different species had fought together. All vessels, this is Admiral Dong, his voice echoed across dozens of different communication systems. Remember your training, trust your alien partners, and show the swarm what happens when the galaxy fights back. The battle was unlike anything. In galactic history, human ships used their ramming tactics and kinetic weapons while colony vessels provided crystal-enhanced targeting. Wreck ships swarmed the swarm vessels like angry insects, using their acid weapons to eat through enemy hulls. The Deeplanders, who normally lived in the crushing depths of ocean worlds, proved to be natural pilots in three-dimensional space combat. Their pressure weapons could crush swarm ships from the inside out, but it was the humans who provided the tactical leadership that made the difference. While alien commanders tried to calculate the most efficient battle plans, human officers made split-second decisions based on instinct and experience. Iron Wolf Squadron, break left and engage those destroyers, ordered Commander Ray over the battle network. Crystal Wing, give them targeting support. Acid rain formation hit their engines when they turned to face Iron Wolf. The tactics were chaotic by alien standards, but they worked. The swarm ships couldn't adapt fast enough to the constantly changing human battle plans. When they focused on one threat, another would appear from an unexpected direction. The battle ended with the complete destruction of the swarm fleet. Not a single enemy vessel escaped. More importantly, not a single Allied ship was lost. The victory celebrations that followed were broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time in generations, species that had never worked together were fighting side by side and winning. Admiral Sun stood in the command center of the growing space station that would become the Alliance headquarters. Through the transparent walls, he could see construction ships from dozens of worlds working together to build the largest military fleet in galactic history. Status report, he requested from his staff. The Kelani have completed upgrades to their entire remaining fleet, reported Captain Wan. All ships now carry human kinetic weapons alongside their crystal technology. The Vrex have produced 12,000 new fighters using hybrid human Vrex designs, added Commander Su. Their manufacturing capabilities are beyond anything we imagined. And the Deeplanders have agreed to train our pilots in three-dimensional combat tactics, finished Captain Gill. Admiral Sun nodded with satisfaction. But there was still one piece missing from their alliance. Any word from the Bright Ones about the Swarm Central Command? They're still analyzing the data from our battles, Captain Wan replied. But they think the Swarm has a master control system somewhere near the galactic core. If we could find it and destroy it, the entire Swarm network would collapse, Admiral Sun finished. How long before we're ready for that kind of operation? Captain Wan consulted his tablet. At current production rates, we'll have enough ships for a major offensive in 6 months. The question is whether we can find the Swarm's central command before they adapt to our tactics. Admiral Sun looked out at the Allied fleet taking shape around the station. Human ships bristling with weapons worked alongside alien vessels he couldn't have imagined a year ago. The galaxy had never seen anything like this alliance, but he knew their enemy was learning too. Every battle taught the Swarm more about human tactics. Every victory came at the cost of revealing their strategies. They had 6 months to build the largest armada in galactic history and find a target that might not exist. If they failed, every world in the galaxy would fall to the Void Swarm. If they succeeded, they might just save everyone. Admiral Sun had fought in enough battles to know that 6 months could be a lifetime or an instant, depending on what your enemy decided to do. He just hoped the Deathworld advantage would be enough. When the final battle came, the galaxy was counting on it. The Void Swarm's response to the growing alliance was swift and terrible. Across the galaxy, machine fleets that had been moving slowly suddenly accelerated their attacks. Entire star systems fell within days as the Swarm abandoned its careful, methodical approach and began a campaign of total destruction. Admiral Jun stood in the command center watching the tactical displays with growing alarm. Red dots representing swarm fleets were appearing faster than the Alliance could respond to them. Status report, he ordered. 15 systems under attack simultaneously, reported his operations officer. The Kalani colonies at New Crystal are under siege. The Vrex industrial worlds are being stripped bare. Even the Deeplander ocean worlds are being drained. Admiral Jung clenched his fists. The swarm had learned from their defeats. Instead of attacking the Alliance directly, they were targeting the civilian populations that supported it. What about our response fleets? We can save maybe 5 systems if we divide our forces, the rest. The officer's voice trailed off. Admiral Jun made the kind of decision that haunted commanders for the rest of their lives. Send Fleet Group Alpha to defend the Vrex manufacturing centers? Fleet Group Beta protects the Kalani crystal farms. Fleet Group Gamma holds the Deeplander nursery. Worlds. Sir, that leaves 10 systems undefended. I know. Admiral Chun's voice was heavy with the weight of command. But without the manufacturing centers, crystal farms, and nursery worlds, we can't continue the war. Sometimes you have to sacrifice pieces to save the whole board. The battles that followed became known as the Week of Fire. Human-led fleets fought desperately across the galaxy, while billions of civilians evacuated their homeworlds. The Alliance won some battles and lost others, but every victory came at a terrible cost. Commander Ray led the elite Stormbreaker Corps in the defense of New Crystal. Her Marines had trained for months in zero-gravity combat, learning to fight inside swarm vessels where their technology was useless. "Listen up, Stormbreakers," she told her troops as their boarding pods approached a massive swarm command ship. "Remember your training. Magnetic boots, cutting tools, and human stubbornness. These machines might be smarter than us, but they've never fought anyone crazy enough to board their ships." The boarding action was unlike anything in military history. Human Marines in powered armor used cutting torches and explosives to carve their way through swarm ships, while the machines tried to flood compartments with toxic gas or decompress them into space, but humans were Deathworlders. They fought in conditions that would kill most aliens. "Deck 7 is secure," reported Sergeant Bin over the comm system. "Moving to the central processing core." "Copy that, Bin. Watch out for those spider drones on Deck 8. They're faster." "Then they look?" Commander Ray's team reached the command ship's brain center first. It was a massive sphere covered in processing nodes and communication arrays. Destroying it would cripple the entire swarm fleet. "Plant the charges," she ordered. "We've got company coming." Swarm defense drones poured into the chamber, their energy weapons lighting up the darkness. But in close quarters, human reflexes and training gave them the advantage. The Marines used their environment, taking cover behind processing nodes and using the swarm's own equipment against them. "Charges set," called out Corporal Lim. 30 seconds to detonation. All teams, fall back to extraction points, Commander Ray ordered. "Let's get out of here before this thing goes up." The explosion that followed destroyed not just the command ship, but 3 other swarm vessels caught in the blast radius. It was a victory, but it came at a price. 7 Marines didn't make it to the extraction pods. General Bin held the defense line at New Geneva for 18 hours against overwhelming odds. His ground forces were outnumbered 50-1. But they had something the swarm couldn't calculate: the human willingness to die for their friends. "All units, this is General Bin." His voice crackled over the comm network as swarm ground forces swung through the city. "We're not retreating. We're not surrendering. We're buying time for the civilian transports to escape." The battle for New Geneva became a legend throughout the galaxy. Human soldiers fought from building to building, using every trick they had learned from their Deathworld origins. They used the city's industrial equipment as weapons, turned construction sites into fortresses, and made the swarm pay for every meter of ground. When the evacuation was complete, General Bin made his final transmission. "All civilian transports are away. Mission accomplished." Bin out. The nuclear charges he had placed throughout the city detonated simultaneously, taking out the entire swarm ground force and General Bin's remaining troops. The sacrifice saved 2 million refugees, but for every victory there were defeats. The Kelani homeworld's crystal cities were finally overrun despite a desperate defense led by human volunteers. Ancient cultural sites that had stood for millennia were stripped away by swarm mining machines. Dr. Ina worked frantically in her mobile laboratory, studying captured swarm technology while battles raged around her. She had made several important discoveries about how the machine intelligence operated, but she needed more data. "Doctor, we need to evacuate," urged her security chief as explosions shook the research station. "Not yet," Dr. Ina replied, her eyes fixed on her computer screen. "I'm close to something important." Her breakthrough came just as the swarm breached the station's outer defenses. The machines had a weakness. They were all connected to a central network that coordinated their actions. If that network could be disrupted, I've got it. She shouted, copying her data to multiple storage devices. "The swarm has a master control node. It has to be somewhere near the galactic core, probably hidden inside an artificial construct." She transmitted her findings just seconds before the swarm overran her position. Lieutenant Kong was a computer specialist who had volunteered for the most dangerous job in the Alliance, hacking swarm communication systems. Working from a heavily shielded ship, he had spent weeks trying to break into their network. "I'm in," he announced during a staff meeting that would change the course of the war. "The swarm network is more vast than we imagined, but it all traces back to a single source." Admiral Sun leaned forward. "Show me." The holographic display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of swarm activity across the galaxy. Thousands of red dots represented swarm fleets, all connected by thin lines of communication. Every order, every tactical decision, every target selection, it all comes from here. Kong pointed to a location near the galaxy's center where all the communication lines converged. "What's at those coordinates?" Admiral Sun asked. "Based on the data traffic, it's massive. Probably an artificial world designed specifically to control the swarm network. If we could destroy it, the entire swarm would lose coordination," Admiral Sun finished. "How long before they detect your hack? Maybe days, maybe hours. But once they do, they'll change all their security protocols. This might be our only chance to locate their central command." Admiral Sun looked around the room at his staff officers. They were tired, worn down by months of desperate fighting. But he could see hope in their eyes for the first time in weeks. "Send word to all Alliance fleets," he ordered. "We're going to the galactic core." "Sir," objected his tactical officer, "we don't have enough ships for an assault on a target that size." "Then we'll build them," Admiral Sun replied. "Every ship, every weapon, every soldier in the Alliance. We're betting everything on one final battle." As if responding to their discovery, the swarm suddenly accelerated its attacks across the galaxy. It was a race now, for the Alliance. Build enough forces to assault the galactic core before the swarm destroyed every world that supported them? The galaxy burned while both sides prepared for the final confrontation. Admiral Sun stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching the largest military fleet in galactic history take shape around him. Ships from 50 different species, armed with weapons that combined the best of alien science and human aggression. In 3 weeks, they would jump to the galactic core and discover what waited for them there. Win or lose, the war would end in the darkness between the stars. Where ancient machines waited for challengers who refused to surrender, the Deathworlders were coming. Fleet Admiral Rowe stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship Unity as the largest armada in galactic history prepared for its final jump. Around him, representatives from 53 species worked together at stations designed by the best. "Engineers from a dozen worlds? Final fleet count?" he asked his operations officer. 12,000 ships, sir. 4,000 human vessels, 8,000 alien allies. Every major species in the galaxy is represented, Rowe nodded. It was an impressive force, but he knew it might not be enough. The journey to the galactic core would take them through space, filled with ancient dangers and increasingly dense swarm defenses. "All ships report ready for jump," announced the navigation officer. "Take us to the core," Rowe ordered. "Let's go finish this war." The jump to hyperspace was unlike anything in galactic history. 12,000 ships moving as one, their combined energy signatures visible from neighboring star systems. The Alliance had committed everything to this single operation. The first week of the journey was relatively peaceful. They passed through sectors that had been stripped bare by the swarm decades ago, leaving behind only dead worlds and empty space. But as they moved deeper toward the galactic core, resistance increased. Ancient automated defenses left behind by civilizations that had died out millions of years ago awakened to challenge the fleet. Gravity mines and energy storms that could tear apart entire squadrons appeared without warning. "We're losing ships to stellar phenomena that shouldn't exist," reported Captain Wan during a staff meeting. "Something is controlling these ancient weapons." "The swarm," said Dr. Yoon, who had joined the fleet as their expert on machine intelligence. "They've reprogrammed every defensive system they've encountered. They're using the galaxy's own history against us. But human adaptability proved its worth once again. When energy storms blocked their path, Deeplander navigators used their three-dimensional thinking to find routes through the chaos. When gravity mines threatened to destroy entire formations, Vrex engineers found ways to detect and disarm them. The fleet pressed forward, losing ships daily but never stopping. Captain Wan led the first reconnaissance mission when they finally reached the galactic core region. What he found there defied imagination. "Admiral, you need to see this." His voice crackled over the long-range communicator, the tactical display activated, showing an image that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Floating in space near the galaxy's central black hole was a construct, the size of a gas giant. Its surface was covered in computational matrices, manufacturing facilities, and weapon emplacements. "How many swarm ships are defending it?" Admiral Rowe asked. "That's the strange part, sir. Almost none. Maybe a few hundred patrol vessels, but nothing like the fleets we expected." Dr. Yoon studied the readings from her station. "The construct itself is the defense. Those aren't just manufacturing facilities, they're the most advanced weapon systems ever built. It could destroy our entire fleet before we get within firing range." Admiral Rowe made a decision that would be studied by military historians for centuries. "We're not going to attack it conventionally. We're going to do what humans do best, something completely insane." The plan he outlined was so audacious that several alien commanders initially refused to believe he was serious. Instead of a direct assault, they would use the galactic core's black hole against their enemy. "We're going to slingshot the entire fleet around the black hole," Admiral Rowe explained. "The gravity will accelerate us to tremendous speeds, but it will also make us impossible to target accurately. We'll have one chance to get close enough to deploy boarding parties." "Sir," objected his tactical officer, "the gravitational forces will tear apart any ship that gets too close." "Not if we time it perfectly. The Kelani have calculated the exact trajectory needed. We'll have a window of approximately 4 minutes to deploy our assault teams before we're pulled past the construct. Colonel Su would lead the boarding operation. Her Stormbreaker cores had been reinforced with volunteers from every species in the Alliance. It would be the largest boarding action ever attempted. "Remember," she told her troops as they prepared for launch, "we're not trying to destroy this thing with explosives. Dr. Yoon says we need to reprogram it, not blow it up. That means we need to fight our way to the central processing core and hold it long enough for her to work." The approach began 12 hours later. The entire fleet accelerated toward the black hole, using its massive gravity to build up speed. Ships that had never been designed for such maneuvers held together through human engineering and alien technology working in perfect harmony. "Entering the gravity well," reported the navigation officer as the stars around them began to bend and stretch. "All ships maintain formation," ordered Admiral Rowe. "Trust your instruments, not your eyes." The swarm construct detected them when they were halfway through their slingshot maneuver. Energy beams lanced out from its surface, but the fleet's tremendous speed made accurate targeting impossible. Most shots missed entirely, while others passed through space the ships had already vacated. "Launching boarding pods," announced Colonel Su as her assault craft detached from the main fleet, hundreds of small ships, and boarding pods streaked toward the construct while the main fleet continued its gravity-assisted approach. It was a one-way trip. There would be no rescue mission. If the boarding parties failed, the construct's surface defenses were unlike anything they had faced before. Automated systems that could think and adapt faster than any organic mind tried to stop the incoming assault craft. But human pilots, trained on a death world where split-second reactions meant survival, managed to thread their way through defensive fire that would have stopped any other species. Sergeant Gill was in the first wave to breach the construct's hull. Inside, he found corridors and chambers that stretched further than he could see, all filled with processing equipment and robotic defenders. "This place is bigger than a planet," he reported over the comm system. "We're going to need every soldier we brought." The fighting inside the construct was unlike any battle in galactic history. Human Marines and their alien allies fought through corridors of living machinery while robotic defenders tried to stop them with weapons designed by machine intelligence, but the swarm had made a crucial error. Their defenses were designed to stop conventional military forces using logical tactics. They had never faced Deathworld warriors who specialized in fighting in impossible conditions. Dr. Yoon reached the central processing core just as the main fleet completed its slingshot maneuver and disappeared into the outer regions of the galaxy. She was on her own now, with only Colonel Su's Marines to protect her while she worked. "How long do you need?" Colonel Su asked as her troops set up defensive positions around the massive chamber. "At least an hour, maybe two," Dr. Yoon replied, connecting her equipment to the swarm's central computer. "I have to understand how this thing thinks before I can reprogram it." The battle for the processing core lasted 3 hours. Waves of robotic defenders tried to break through the human defensive lines while Dr. Yoon worked frantically at her computer terminals. Marines fell, but others took their places. Ammunition ran low, so they used captured swarm weapons. When those failed, they fought with cutting tools and explosives. "I've got it," Dr. Yoon finally announced. The swarm was created millions of years ago by a species called the Ancients. It was designed to protect the galaxy from something called the Dark Fleet, an external threat that was supposed to return someday. But the Dark Fleet never came back," Colonel Su said, firing at approaching robots while talking. "Exactly. The swarm has been following its original programming for millions of years, treating every new species as a potential threat, but I can change that programming." Dr. Yoon's fingers flew over her keyboard as she uploaded new directives to the swarm's central intelligence. Instead of viewing organic life as a threat to be eliminated, the swarm would now see it as something to be protected. The change wasn't instant, but it was dramatic. Across the galaxy, swarm fleets that had been attacking Alliance worlds suddenly stopped their bombardments. Mining operations ceased. Robot armies powered down. In the processing core, the robotic defenders stopped attacking and began to retreat. "Did it work?" Colonel Su asked. Dr. Yoon checked her readings. "The swarm is broadcasting new orders to all its units. They're no longer targeting organic life forms. Some facilities are already beginning to convert their operations to construction and research instead of destruction." The war was over. Admiral Rowe returned with the rescue fleet 3 days later to find the construct's weapon systems offline and its communication arrays broadcasting messages of peace to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The swarm had become the galaxy's protector instead of its destroyer. 6 months later, Admiral Minho walked through the rebuilt crystal gardens of the Kelani homeworld. The swarm's construction units had worked alongside organic engineers to restore what had been destroyed. Using technology far beyond what any single species could have achieved alone, the galaxy has changed, Commander Yuna observed, her crystals glowing with contentment. Species that had never met before the war are now close allies. Trade routes span the entire galaxy. Scientific advancement has accelerated beyond anything we thought possible.